The winter wind cut through Daisy Lawson's threadbare dress like 1,000 frozen knives as she stood outside the Wagon master's tent in Colfax, California, watching her last chance at survival prepare to leave without her. She had walked 3 days from Sacramento with nothing but the wool coat on her back and $17 sewn into her hem. Money she had saved working in a laundry, until the owner's wife accused her of stealing and threw her into the street with nothing but false accusations and genuine bruises. "I can pay," Daisy said again, her voice steadier than her shaking hands. The wagon master, a grizzled man named Fletcher with tobacco-stained teeth, looked her up and down with eyes that made her skin crawl. $30 for passage to Virginia City, he said flatly. No exceptions. Daisy's heart sank. Virginia City, Nevada, where her aunt supposedly ran a boarding house and had written months ago offering Daisy work and a fresh start. That letter had been her lifeline, and now it seemed impossibly far away. She had $13 short of the fare, and the next wagon train would not come through until spring, months away. The boarding house where she had been staying had already told her she needed to leave by tomorrow. She had no job, no prospects, and winter in the California mountains was not something to face alone and penniless. "I have this coat," she heard herself say, her fingers moving to the buttons with a strange detachment. "It is good wool, barely worn. It must be worth $13 at least." Fletcher's eyes narrowed, calculating. He reached out and felt the fabric between his dirty fingers. The coat had been her mother's, one of the few things Daisy had left of her family. Her mother had died of cholera 2 years ago, her father in a mining accident the year before that. The coat still smelled faintly of her mother's lavender soap, a scent Daisy clung to on the hardest nights. "Fine," Fletcher said finally. "But you sleep with the cargo, not in the passenger wagon. And you work for your supper, helping my wife with cooking and washing up." Daisy nodded quickly before he could change his mind, her fingers already unbuttoning the coat despite the cold that immediately seeped through her thin dress. She wore only a cotton dress meant for summer, and a chemise beneath, both threadbare and patched. She had sold everything else already, piece by piece just to eat. Fletcher took the coat and wadded it under his arm without ceremony. "We leave at dawn. Be here or be left behind." As Daisy walked away from the tent, wrapping her arms around herself against the biting January wind, she wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The temperature was dropping fast as the sun sank behind the Sierra Nevada mountains, and she could see her breath forming white clouds in the air. The walk back to the boarding house seemed impossibly long, and she was shivering so hard her teeth chattered. She had barely made it to the edge of the wagon camp when a voice called out behind her, "Miss." "Excuse me, miss." Daisy turned to see a tall man striding toward her, silhouetted against the setting sun. As he drew closer, she could make out a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and eyes the color of whiskey that seemed to catch the last rays of sunlight. He wore a cowboy's attire, worn denim pants, scuffed boots, a red flannel shirt, and a thick sheepskin coat that looked blissfully warm. "I saw what you did back there," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "Trading your coat for passage." Daisy lifted her chin, embarrassed to be caught in such desperate circumstances. "It is my business, sir." "I am not judging," he said quickly, holding up his hands. "I am heading to Virginia City myself, riding alongside the wagon train. My name is Marcus Xavier. I work cattle mostly, but I am heading up to Nevada to meet my brother. He has a ranch there." "Daisy Lawson," she replied, because it seemed rude not to, even though she wanted nothing more than to escape this humiliating conversation and find somewhere warm. Marcus was studying her with those intense eyes, and she resisted the urge to squirm under his gaze. She knew what she must look like, a desperate woman with nowhere to go, shivering in a dress that had been mended so many times it was more patches than original fabric. "It is going to drop below freezing tonight," Marcus said, "and from what I hear, Fletcher does not exactly provide luxury accommodations for his passengers, even the paying ones." "I will manage," Daisy said stiffly. "I am sure you will," Marcus said, and something in his tone made it sound like he actually believed it, like he saw strength in her rather than just desperation. Then, before she could protest, he was shrugging out of his sheepskin coat. "But there is no sense in freezing when there is a simple solution." "I cannot take your coat," Daisy protested, even as her body screamed at her to grab the warm garment and never let go. "You are not taking it," Marcus said firmly. He stepped forward and draped it over her shoulders, and the warmth was so immediate and overwhelming that Daisy actually gasped. The coat smelled like leather and wood smoke and something else, something masculine and clean. It was heavy and warm, and for the first time in hours, she stopped shivering. "I am lending it to you. I have plenty of other gear, and I will be sleeping near a fire tonight. You, from what I overheard, will be sleeping in a wagon bed with no heat." Daisy wanted to refuse. She had learned the hard way that men rarely did things out of pure kindness, that there was always a price to pay. But the cold was so bitter, and the coat was so warm, and something in Marcus Xavier's eyes seemed honest. "I will return it in the morning," she said quietly. "Keep it for the journey," Marcus said. "Seriously, I have a bedroll and a good slicker. You need it more than I do." "Why are you doing this?" Daisy asked suspiciously. "You do not know me." Marcus was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "My sister died 2 winters ago," he said finally. "She got caught in a storm, and she was not dressed warm enough. By the time someone found her, it was too late. I just figure if someone had given her a coat, maybe things would have been different." He looked back at Daisy, and there was old pain in his eyes. "So consider it a favor to her memory, not to me." Daisy felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "I am sorry about your sister, me too." Marcus tipped his hat to her. "I will see you at dawn, Miss Lawson. Get some rest." He walked away before she could say anything else, heading back toward where several horses were tethered. Daisy watched him go, clutching the warm coat around her shoulders, feeling confused and grateful and suspicious all at once. That night, lying in the back of Fletcher's supply wagon on a bed of burlap sacks, wrapped in Marcus Xavier's coat, Daisy slept warmer than she had in weeks. But she barely slept at all because her mind kept returning to whiskey-colored eyes and a kindness she did not know how to accept. Dawn came cold and clear, with frost coating every surface and turning the world into something crystalline and beautiful. Daisy was up before the sun, helping Mrs. Fletcher prepare breakfast for the 20-odd passengers and crew. Mrs. Fletcher was a sour-faced woman who spoke little and smiled less, but she seemed satisfied with Daisy's work, which was all Daisy could hope for. As the travelers gathered to eat, Daisy spotted Marcus across the camp, tending to a beautiful roan horse. He wore a different coat today, a canvas duster lined with wool, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. When he caught her eye, he smiled and tipped his hat, and Daisy felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the cold. The wagon train consisted of 5 wagons total. Fletcher's supply wagon that Daisy would ride in, 3 family wagons carrying settlers heading to Nevada to try their luck at farming or mining, and 1 wagon carrying a widow named Mrs. Thornton and her teenage son. There were also 4 men on horseback, including Marcus, hired as scouts and guards for the journey. The trail from Colfax to Virginia City would take them through the Sierra Nevada mountains, a journey of roughly a week if the weather held. January was not the ideal time for such travel, but the winter had been mild so far, and Fletcher wanted to make the trip before the next storm system rolled in. As the wagons rolled out, Daisy sat in the back of the supply wagon, surrounded by barrels of flour, salt pork, and dried beans. Marcus had been right about the lack of comfort, but at least she was out of the wind, and she still had his coat wrapped around her. She had tried to return it that morning, but he had waved her off, insisting she keep it until they reached warmer weather. The first day passed slowly. Daisy helped Mrs. Fletcher during the meal stops and spent the rest of the time jostling in the wagon bed, watching the landscape roll by. The foothills were beautiful in their winter starkness, all golden grass and dark oaks against a brilliant blue sky. That evening, when they made camp, Marcus appeared at her elbow as she was hauling water from a nearby creek. "Let me help," he said, taking the heavy bucket from her hands before she could protest. "You do not have to keep rescuing me," Daisy said, falling into step beside him. "I do not think I am rescuing you," Marcus replied. "From what I have seen, you are doing fine on your own. I am just being neighborly." "Is that what they call it in Texas?" Daisy asked, guessing at his accent. Marcus grinned. "Born and raised outside San Antonio, you have a good ear." "My father was from Texas," Daisy said. "He used to talk about it all the time, how big the sky was, how you could ride for days and never see the same view twice." "He was not wrong," Marcus said. "What brought him to California? Gold fever, same as everyone else in '49. He never struck it rich, but he stayed anyway. Met my mother here, started a family." Daisy's voice softened. "They are both gone now." "I am sorry," Marcus said, and he sounded like he meant it. "So you are heading to Virginia City alone?" "My aunt runs a boarding house there. She offered me work." Daisy did not mention that she had never actually met this aunt, that the connection was distant and uncertain, that she was gambling everything on the kindness of a relative who might not even remember her existence. They had reached the camp, and Marcus set the water bucket down near Mrs. Fletcher's cook fire. Other fires were being lit around the circle of wagons, and the smell of coffee and salt pork filled the air. "Well, if you need anything on this journey, you just holler," Marcus said. "I mean that." Over the next several days, a pattern emerged. Marcus would appear at various times, always with some excuse. To help with heavy lifting, to share coffee from his better supply, to point out landmarks or wildlife. He never lingered too long or made Daisy uncomfortable, but his presence became something she looked forward to, a bright spot in the hard work and discomfort of the journey. On the third day, as they climbed higher into the mountains, snow began to fall. It started as light flurries but quickly grew heavier, and by mid-afternoon the wagons were struggling through several inches of fresh powder. "We need to make camp early," Marcus told Fletcher, riding up beside the lead wagon. "There is a sheltered spot about a mile ahead, near a stand of pines. We should stop there before this gets worse." Fletcher argued, wanting to push on, but the other scouts backed Marcus up, and eventually the wagon master relented. They made camp in the shelter of the pines, and the men worked quickly to secure the wagons and horses while the women prepared a hasty meal. That night, the temperature plummeted. Daisy lay in the supply wagon, wrapped in Marcus's coat and every scrap of burlap she could find, but still the cold seeped through. She could hear the wind howling outside, and the wagon creaked and groaned with each gust. She must have finally dozed off because she woke to the sound of someone calling her name. Disoriented, she sat up to find Marcus standing at the back of the wagon, snow covering his shoulders. "Miss Lawson, you need to come to the fire," he said urgently. "It is too cold out here. You will freeze." "Fletcher said I had to stay in the wagon," Daisy protested, but her voice was weak, and she was shaking so hard she could barely form words. "Fletcher is asleep in his own wagon with his wife and a stove," Marcus said flatly. "He does not get to decide whether you freeze to death. Come on." He reached out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Daisy took it. His grip was strong and warm, and he helped her climb out of the wagon with surprising gentleness. Her legs nearly gave out when she hit the ground, numb from cold, and Marcus steadied her with a hand on her elbow. He led her to one of the fires, where two of the other scouts sat huddled in their bedrolls. They nodded at Daisy without comment as Marcus settled her near the warmth and then draped an extra blanket around her shoulders over his coat. "Stay here," he said firmly. "I will deal with Fletcher in the morning if he complains." "You will get in trouble," Daisy said through chattering teeth. "Let me worry about that," Marcus replied. He sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You just worry about getting warm." Gradually, feeling returned to Daisy's fingers and toes, painful at first, then blessedly normal. The fire crackled and popped, and overhead, the stars were brilliant in the clear spaces between the snow clouds. "Thank you," Daisy said quietly. "Again." "You can stop thanking me," Marcus said, his voice equally soft. "I know you would do the same if our positions were reversed." Would she? Daisy wanted to think so, but she had spent the last year in survival mode, trusting no one, looking out only for herself because no one else would. Marcus Xavier's casual kindness was both foreign and seductive, and she did not know what to make of it or of him. "Tell me about your brother's ranch," she said, wanting to change the subject. Marcus's face brightened. "Matthew has been working the place for 5 years now. Started with nothing, just a plot of land and a handful of cattle. Now he is running a couple hundred head, has a real house built, even married a nice woman last year. He keeps writing to me, telling me to come help him expand the operation. And you are finally going." "Finally worked up the courage," Marcus admitted. "I have been drifting for a while now, working different ranches, never settling. After our sister died, I just could not seem to stay in one place. But I am 26 years old, and I figure it is time to put down roots." "26 is not so old," Daisy said. "How old are you?" Marcus asked. 23, Daisy replied, "and I feel about 100 some days." Marcus laughed, a low, warm sound. "I know that feeling." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire. The other scouts had fallen asleep, their snores adding to the night sounds. Daisy felt herself growing drowsy, the warmth and exhaustion finally catching up to her. "You can sleep," Marcus said gently. "I will keep watch and make sure the fire does not die." "You need to sleep too," Daisy protested weakly. "I will rest later." "Sleep, Daisy." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about the intimacy of it, combined with the warmth and safety of the moment, made Daisy's eyes drift closed. She felt herself listing sideways, and then there was a strong arm supporting her, guiding her head to rest against a solid shoulder. "Sleep," Marcus said again, and this time Daisy did not have the strength to argue. She woke at dawn to find herself lying on a bedroll near the fire, covered in multiple blankets. Marcus was gone, and the camp was already stirring with activity. Daisy sat up quickly, embarrassed to have fallen asleep on him, but when she looked around, Marcus was at the picket line with the horses, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. Fletcher did complain about Daisy sleeping by the fire, but Marcus faced him down with a quiet intensity that made the wagon master back off. Daisy watched the exchange from a distance, marveling at the way Marcus stood up for her without making a show of it, just calm and firm and unwavering. As they prepared to move out, Marcus brought her a tin cup of hot coffee, the real stuff, not the burnt chicory Mrs. Fletcher served. "Thank you," Daisy said, wrapping her cold hands around the cup. "For last night and for this and for everything." "You are welcome," Marcus said simply. Then he smiled, that slow smile that did strange things to her heartbeat. "Besides, I like your company. Is that such a crime?" "I suppose not," Daisy said, unable to stop her own smile from forming. The wagons rolled on, climbing higher into the mountains. The snow from the previous night had stopped, but the going was slow and treacherous. On the 5th day, they reached the summit of the pass, and Daisy caught her first glimpse of Nevada stretching out beyond. Vast, harsh, and beautiful, that night as she helped Mrs. Fletcher clean up after supper, the older woman surprised her by speaking. "That cowboy is sweet on you," she said bluntly. Daisy nearly dropped the plate she was washing. "What? No, he is just being kind." Mrs. Fletcher snorted. "I have been alive 47 years, girl. I know what a man in love looks like. That Xavier boy watches you like you are water, and he has been in the desert for a week." "You are mistaken," Daisy said, but her heart was pounding. "Believe what you want," Mrs. Fletcher said, "but I will tell you this. Good men are rare. You find one who treats you decent, you hold on to him." Daisy thought about those words long into the night. Could Marcus really have feelings for her? And more terrifyingly, what were her own feelings? She had spent so long just trying to survive that she had not allowed herself to think about things like love or romance. Those were luxuries for women with security, not for desperate creatures trading their coats for a chance at survival. But she could not deny that her heart lifted every time Marcus appeared, that she looked forward to their conversations, brief as they often were, that she felt safer just knowing he was nearby. On the 6th day, disaster struck. One of the family wagons hit a rock and broke an axle, and the wagon master called a halt to repairs. The delay put everyone on edge because clouds were gathering on the horizon, promising another storm. Marcus and the other scouts went hunting to replenish the meat supply, and Daisy helped the family with the broken wagon tend their children. There were 3 little ones, all under the age of 7, and keeping them entertained while their parents worked on repairs was exhausting but also strangely wonderful. Daisy had not spent time around children in years, and their innocent laughter was infectious. When Marcus returned with a deer slung over his saddle, he found Daisy playing a clapping game with the youngest child, a girl of 4. "You are good with children," he observed, dismounting. "I like them," Daisy said, standing and brushing off her skirt. The little girl immediately attached herself to Daisy's leg, not wanting the game to end. "You want children of your own someday?" Marcus asked, and there was something in his tone that made the question feel weighted with importance. "I have not let myself think that far ahead," Daisy admitted. "But yes, I think I would, if circumstances were different." "What circumstances?" Marcus asked. "Having a home, a husband, security," Daisy said, trying to keep her voice light. "Little things like that." "Those do not seem so impossible," Marcus said seriously, "for the right person." Their eyes met, and Daisy felt that flutter in her chest again, stronger this time. Before either could say more, Fletcher was shouting that the wagon was fixed and they needed to move out. That night they camped in a canyon, seeking shelter from the wind. The promised storm was getting closer, and everyone could feel it in the air. Marcus appeared at Daisy's side as she was setting up her sleeping spot in the wagon. "I do not like the look of those clouds," he said, gazing at the sky. "This is going to be bad. How far are we from Virginia City?" Daisy asked. "Maybe a day and a half in good weather, but if this storm hits like I think it will, we might be stuck here for a while." Daisy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Being stranded in a winter storm in the mountains was dangerous, potentially deadly. They had supplies, but not unlimited ones. "Hey," Marcus said softly, touching her shoulder. We will be all right. Fletcher might be a greedy bastard, but he knows these mountains. We will hunker down and wait it out if we need to." "I am not sure I would survive winter in the wild," Daisy confessed. "I am a city girl, Marcus. I do not know how to do things like hunt or build a fire or any of the useful skills." "You know how to survive," Marcus said firmly. "That is the most important skill there is. You have made it this far alone, and that is not nothing. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "you do not have to know everything. That is what friends are for." "Friends," Daisy repeated softly. "Is that what we are?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and in the fading light his eyes seemed almost to glow. "I hope we are," he said. "And maybe, if you are willing, we could be more than that someday." Daisy's breath caught. Before she could respond, the first snowflakes began to fall. The storm hit with a vengeance just after midnight. Daisy woke to the wagon shaking in the wind, and when she peered out, all she could see was white. The snow was falling so thick and fast that the other wagons were barely visible. She huddled deeper into Marcus's coat, which she had not returned despite his other coat, because he kept insisting she keep it. The hours crawled by, each one colder than the last. Daisy could hear shouting outside, men trying to secure the animals and supplies, but it was muffled by the wind and snow. When dawn finally came, it brought no relief. The storm continued to rage, and Fletcher made the decision to stay put. They could not travel in these conditions. They would only get lost or have more wagons damaged. Daisy helped Mrs. Fletcher prepare a cold breakfast since it was too dangerous to maintain fires in the wind. As she worked, she kept looking for Marcus, but did not see him. The other scouts were helping to shore up the wagon circle, but Marcus was nowhere to be found. A cold knot of fear formed in Daisy's stomach. Where was he? It was not until mid-morning that Marcus appeared, covered head to toe in snow, leading his horse and 3 others. "One of the families had their horses break loose," he explained to Fletcher. "Went chasing after them, found them about half a mile down canyon huddled together." "You damn fool," Fletcher growled. "You could have died out there, and for what? Horses." "Those horses are that family's livelihood," Marcus said calmly. "And everyone made it back safe, so no harm done." But there was harm done. As the day wore on and Marcus stripped off his wet outer layers, Daisy could see him starting to shiver. He tried to hide it, tried to keep working, but by evening he was shaking badly. "You need to warm up," Daisy told him, cornering him by the supply wagon. "I am fine," Marcus insisted, but his lips had a faint blue tinge. "You are not fine, you are freezing." Daisy made a decision. "Come on." She pulled him into the supply wagon, the only place with any privacy, and began piling blankets around him. Marcus tried to protest, but he was shaking too hard to be effective. "You are taking your coat back," Daisy said firmly, beginning to shrug out of the sheepskin coat. "The hell I am," Marcus managed through chattering teeth. "You need it. Marcus, you saved those horses and you nearly froze doing it. You need this coat now more than I do." Daisy got the coat off and wrapped it around his shoulders, then added another blanket. She was instantly cold without it, but she ignored the feeling. "Besides, there are 2 of us here now. Body heat works better than anything." She did not give him time to argue. She settled beside him and pulled the blankets around both of them, pressing close to share warmth. Marcus stiffened for a moment, then relaxed against her. "This is not proper," he mumbled. "I do not care about proper right now," Daisy said. "I care about you not freezing to death after you risked your life for those horses." They sat like that for a long time, sharing warmth and silence. Gradually, Marcus stopped shaking. His arm came around Daisy's shoulders, holding her close, and she let herself relax into his warmth. "You are remarkable," Marcus said quietly. "Do you know that?" "I am just trying to return a favor," Daisy said. No, I mean it. You have been through hell, lost everything, traded away your only coat just for a chance at a better life, and yet here you are taking care of someone else. That takes strength, courage. Daisy felt tears prick her eyes. I do not feel strong. The strongest people never do, Marcus said. He shifted so he could look at her, his face just inches from hers. Daisy, I need to tell you something. I did not plan this, and maybe the timing is terrible, but I cannot keep it to myself anymore. What? Daisy whispered, her heart hammering. I am falling in love with you, Marcus said simply. Maybe I already have fallen. I know we have only known each other a week, and I know you have every reason not to trust men or promises or anything that sounds too good to be true. But I look at you and I see everything I have been searching for. Strength and kindness and resilience. You make me want to be better, to build something lasting, to stop drifting and start living. Daisy could not breathe. Marcus, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything right now, Marcus said. I just needed you to know. When we get to Virginia City, if your aunt's place works out, that is wonderful. But if it does not, or if you just want another option, come with me to my brother's ranch. Not as a servant or a charity case. As my partner, my wife, if you will have me. We will build a life together. You are proposing? Daisy asked, shocked. I am saying I want a future with you in it, Marcus said. We can take it as slow as you need. Court properly, wait a year, whatever you want. But I needed you to know my intentions are honorable and they are serious. Daisy looked into those whiskey-colored eyes and saw nothing but honesty and hope. A week ago, she had been alone and desperate, trading her last possession for a gamble on a relative she had never met. Now a good man was offering her something she had barely dared to dream about, a real home, a partner, a future. I do not have anything to bring to a marriage, Daisy said quietly. No dowry, no possessions, no family connections, just myself. Just yourself is everything I want, Marcus said, and the raw sincerity in his voice broke something open in Daisy's chest. She kissed him then, a soft press of lips that tasted like hope and new beginnings. Marcus made a surprised sound, then kissed her back gently, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. When they broke apart, both were smiling. I am falling in love with you too, Daisy whispered. I think I have been since you wrapped that coat around me. So, is that a yes? Marcus asked, his eyes bright. It is a yes to courting and to seeing where this goes, Daisy said. And if things work out the way I hope they do, then yes to the rest too. Marcus pulled her close, and they sat wrapped in each other's arms while the storm raged outside. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Daisy felt safe. Not just physically safe from the cold and the storm, but emotionally safe, like she had finally found a place to rest. The storm lasted 2 more days. During that time, Marcus and Daisy became inseparable. They still maintained propriety, knowing the other travelers were watching, but everyone could see the change between them. Marcus was openly courting Daisy now, and Fletcher's wife gave Daisy knowing looks that said she had been right all along. When the storm finally cleared, the wagon train emerged to find the world transformed. Snow covered everything in a pristine blanket, and the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. They had lost 2 days, but everyone and everything had survived, which was what mattered. The final push to Virginia City took them another full day through deep snow, but spirits were high. Daisy rode up front with Mrs. Fletcher now, instead of in the back with the cargo, and Marcus rode alongside the wagon, finding excuses to start conversations that made Daisy laugh. You laugh like sunshine, Marcus told her at one point, and Daisy blushed at the poetry of it. You are getting awfully sweet-tongued, Cowboy, she teased. You bring it out in me, Marcus said, grinning. They reached Virginia City on a cold, clear afternoon 8 days after leaving Colfax. The mining town sprawled across the hillside, a chaotic jumble of buildings and tents, mine shafts and mule trains. It was loud and dirty and crowded, and Daisy felt a moment of homesickness for the quiet beauty of the mountains they had just left. Fletcher stopped the wagons at the edge of town to let everyone disembark. Daisy gathered her few possessions, which consisted of the clothes on her back, a borrowed hairbrush, and Marcus's coat, which she still wore. "You know where your aunt's boarding house is?" Marcus asked as he helped her down from the wagon. "I have an address," Daisy said, pulling out the worn letter from her pocket. "Maple Street." "I will walk you there," Marcus said immediately. They made their way through the muddy streets, dodging wagons and horses and miners who stared at Daisy with varying degrees of interest and rudeness. Marcus kept himself between her and the worst of the crowds, his hand on her elbow, protective but not possessive. Maple Street turned out to be a slightly quieter part of town, with several large houses that had been converted to boarding houses and hotels. The address Daisy sought was a 2-story building with peeling paint and a crooked sign that read, "Lawson's Boarding House." "Well, at least you found it," Marcus said encouragingly. Daisy's hands were shaking as she knocked on the door. A long moment passed, and then the door opened to reveal a thin woman with graying hair and suspicious eyes. "Yes," the woman said curtly. "I am looking for Mrs. Margaret Lawson," Daisy said. "I am Daisy Lawson, her niece. She wrote to me about 6 months ago offering me a position here." The woman's expression did not soften. "Margaret died 3 months back, influenza. I bought this place from her estate." The world seemed to tilt under Daisy's feet. Her aunt was dead. The job did not exist. She had come all this way, given up everything for a position that no longer existed. "Oh," Daisy heard herself say distantly. "I see. Thank you for letting me know." She turned and walked away blindly, barely aware of Marcus following her. It was not until they were around the corner and out of sight that her legs gave out. Marcus caught her before she could collapse, easing her down to sit on a wooden crate outside a closed mercantile. "She is dead," Daisy said numbly. "My aunt is dead. I have nowhere to go." "Hey, look at me," Marcus said, crouching in front of her and taking her cold hands in his warm ones. "You have somewhere to go. You are coming with me, remember, to my brother's ranch." "Marcus, you do not have to do that. You made that offer thinking I had another option, that I could choose you." "But I do not have a choice now. I do not want you to feel obligated." "Obligated?" Marcus looked genuinely offended. "Daisy, I love you. That has not changed in the last 5 minutes. I would love you if you were an heiress with 100 options. I will love you with no options." "The circumstances do not matter, you matter." "But I have nothing," Daisy said, and now the tears were falling. "No job, no money, nowhere to live. I am completely dependent on your charity. First, it is not charity when I want you there. Second, you have skills. You are a hard worker, you are smart, you are kind. My brother is always saying they need more help at the ranch. You could work there, earn your own money if that matters to you, or you could just focus on building a life with me. Whatever you want, Daisy, you have choices. You always have choices." Daisy looked at him through her tears and saw nothing but love and certainty. Marcus Xavier believed in her, believed in them, even when she could not believe in herself. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," Marcus said. "Come with me. Build a life with me. We will figure out the rest as we go." Daisy took a shaky breath and nodded. "Okay. Yes, I will come with you." Marcus's face lit up with a smile so bright it could have rivaled the sun. He pulled her to her feet and wrapped her in a careful hug, and Daisy clung to him, letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. They spent that night at a respectable hotel, in separate rooms that Marcus paid for without blinking. The next morning, They bought supplies for the 3-day ride to the ranch, including proper winter clothes for Daisy with money Marcus insisted was an investment in their future. The journey to the Xavier Ranch took them northeast of Virginia City, into rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and juniper. It was beautiful in a stark way, all big sky and distant mountains. Marcus pointed out landmarks and told stories about his brother, and Daisy found herself relaxing into the rhythm of travel. On the second night, as they sat by their campfire under a canopy of stars, Marcus said, "Tell me something about yourself I do not know yet." Daisy thought for a moment. "I can read and write, which is not common for women of my station. My mother insisted on it. She said education was the one thing no one could take away from you." "Your mother was a wise woman," Marcus said. "What about you? Tell me something I do not know." Marcus smiled. "I am terrified of chickens. Completely, irrationally terrified. Got chased by a rooster when I was 5 and never got over it." Daisy laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet night. "You face down angry cattle and mountain storms, but you are afraid of chickens." "Do not mock my pain," Marcus said, but he was grinning. "Everyone has their weakness." "I will protect you from all the scary roosters," Daisy promised solemnly, then dissolved into laughter again. Marcus watched her laugh, his expression soft. "I love hearing you laugh. I want to spend the rest of my life giving you reasons to laugh like that." "That is a good goal," Daisy said, her laughter fading into a warm smile. "I think I would like that very much." They reached the Xavier Ranch on the afternoon of the third day. It was a sprawling property with a sturdy ranch house, several outbuildings, and extensive corrals. Cattle dotted the surrounding hillsides, and smoke rose from the chimney of the main house. As they rode up, a man emerged from the barn. He was slightly shorter than Marcus but built along similar lines, with the same dark hair and strong features. His face broke into a huge grin when he saw Marcus. "About damn time you showed up," the man called. "I was beginning to think you were never coming." Marcus dismounted and embraced his brother, the two men pounding each other's backs in that way men do when they have strong emotions they do not quite know how to express. "Matthew, I want you to meet someone," Marcus said, turning to help Daisy dismount. "This is Daisy Lawson." "Daisy, my brother Matthew." Matthew's eyebrows rose as he took in Daisy and the way Marcus was looking at her. "Well now, this is an interesting development. Pleased to meet you, Miss Lawson." "Please call me Daisy," she said, shaking his hand. "Come on inside," Matthew said. "Emma has been cooking all day, convinced Marcus would arrive today. She will be thrilled to have another woman around." Emma Xavier turned out to be a cheerful woman about Daisy's age with red hair and quick smile. She welcomed Daisy warmly and immediately began fussing over both travelers, getting them settled and fed. That evening, after a delicious meal of beef stew and fresh bread, Marcus and Daisy told the story of how they met. Emma was openly romantic about the whole thing, sighing over Marcus giving Daisy his coat and insisting it was the most romantic thing she had ever heard. "So what are your intentions, brother?" Matthew asked bluntly. "I can see you are smitten, but what are we talking about here?" "I am going to marry her," Marcus said calmly, "if she will have me. We are courting properly right now, but I want it known that my intentions are honorable and serious." Emma squealed with delight. "Oh, we are going to have a wedding. Daisy, you must let me help you plan it." "Slow down," Daisy said, laughing but also blushing. "We have only known each other 2 weeks." "I knew I was going to marry Emma after 1 week," Matthew said, smiling at his wife. "When you know, you know." "Exactly," Marcus said, reaching over to take Daisy's hand. "But we will do this properly. I want to give Daisy time to be certain, to get to know me and this place before making any permanent decisions." "I appreciate that," Daisy said softly, squeezing his hand. Emma set Daisy up in the spare bedroom, a small but cozy space with a real bed and clean linens. After the weeks of hardship and uncertainty, it felt like impossible luxury. Daisy lay awake for a long time that night, staring at the ceiling and trying to process how much her life had changed in such a short time. The next weeks fell into a comfortable pattern. Daisy helped Emma with the household work and learned the rhythms of ranch life. She proved adept at cooking and keeping accounts, and she had a gentle way with the animals that surprised everyone, including herself. Marcus worked alongside his brother, helping with the cattle and making repairs around the property. But every evening, he would seek out Daisy, and they would walk together in the fading light, talking about everything and nothing. Marcus told her about his childhood in Texas, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the sister they had lost, and the parents who had died of fever when he was 18. Daisy told him about her life in Sacramento, the good times before her parents died and the hard times after, her dreams of having a real home again. "You have that now," Marcus said one evening as they stood watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "A home, I mean. This place with us. You belong here, Daisy." "I am starting to believe that," Daisy admitted. "It is strange, though. A month ago I was desperate and alone. Now I have family again. It feels almost too good to be true." "It is true," Marcus said firmly, "and it is only going to get better." He was right. As winter gave way to early spring, Daisy found herself happier than she could remember being since her parents died. She loved the work, loved the land, loved the sense of purpose and belonging. And she loved Marcus more with each passing day. Marcus was everything she had never dared hope for in a partner. He was kind and hardworking, patient and passionate. He made her laugh, listened when she talked, and never made her feel less than for being a woman or for her past hardships. When he kissed her, which he did with increasing frequency as their courtship progressed, it felt like coming home. In March, 3 months after they met on that cold day in Colfax, Marcus proposed properly. He took Daisy on a picnic to a beautiful spot overlooking the valley, and got down on one knee with a simple gold ring that had belonged to his mother. "Daisy Lawson, you are the strongest, kindest, most remarkable woman I have ever known," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. Will you marry me? Will you build this life with me?" "Yes," Daisy said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Marcus, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her deeply, and Daisy felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony in Virginia City, with Matthew and Emma standing as witnesses. Daisy wore a new dress of soft blue cotton that Emma had helped her sew, and Marcus wore his best suit. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, learning to live together and share space and decisions. But it was also wonderful. Marcus was an attentive husband, always checking that Daisy was happy, always looking for ways to make her smile. Daisy threw herself into ranch life, discovering a talent for raising chickens that amused Marcus to no end given his childhood fears. "My wife, protect her from poultry," he would tease, and Daisy would laugh and chase him with a feather duster. In their second year of marriage, Daisy discovered she was pregnant. The news filled both of them with joy and no small amount of terror. When she went into labor on a stormy night in November, Marcus paced outside the bedroom like a caged animal until Emma finally let him in to hold Daisy's hand. Their son was born just before dawn, screaming his arrival to the world. He had Marcus's dark hair and Daisy's blue eyes, and they named him Daniel. "Daniel Xavier," Marcus said softly, holding his son for the first time with a look of wonder on his face. "Welcome to the world, little man." Daisy watched her husband cradle their baby, and her heart felt so full she thought it might overflow. This was her family. This was her home. She had come so far from that desperate woman trading her coat for passage, and yet in some ways she was still her. Still strong, still surviving, but now she was also thriving. Over the years, the ranch prospered. Marcus and Matthew expanded the herd and bought more land. Daisy kept the books and helped Emma with the enormous task of feeding and caring for everyone. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Dorothy 2 years after Daniel, and another son named David 3 years after that. Life was not always easy. There were droughts and harsh winters, cattle rustlers and illnesses. But they faced everything together, as a family, supporting each other through the hard times and celebrating the good. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus took Daisy back to that spot where he had proposed. The children were staying with Matthew and Emma for the night, giving them rare time alone. "You remember the day we met?" Marcus asked as they sat watching the sunset, his arm around her shoulders. "I remember being certain I was going to freeze to death," Daisy said. "And then this cowboy appeared and wrapped me in his coat like it was the most natural thing in the world." "I fell in love with you in that moment," Marcus admitted. "When you tried to refuse the coat, even though you were shaking so hard you could barely stand. You had so much pride and strength, even in the worst circumstances. I knew then that you were special." "I was terrified of you," Daisy confessed. "Terrified of trusting you, of hoping for something better. I had been disappointed so many times. Are you disappointed now?" Marcus asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Daisy turned to look at him. This man who had saved her in so many ways, who had given her a home and a family, and a love she had never dared dream of. His hair had a few threads of silver now, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. "Not for a single moment," she said. "You gave me everything, Marcus. Everything I needed, and everything I did not even know I wanted." "You gave me the same," Marcus said. "I was drifting before you, just going through the motions. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to build something lasting." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky change colors. In the distance, they could hear the lowing of cattle and the call of evening birds. It was peaceful and perfect. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked eventually. "That coat," Daisy said with a smile. "I still have it, you know, packed away in the cedar chest." "I know. I see it sometimes when you are getting out the winter blankets. It is silly, I suppose, keeping an old coat, but it represents everything to me. That moment when someone finally saw me, saw that I was worth saving. It represents hope and new beginnings and love." "It is not silly at all," Marcus said. "That coat brought us together. I will always be grateful I had it to give you that day." As the stars began to appear overhead, Marcus pulled Daisy closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder, perfectly content. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, all the hardships and heartbreaks, the desperate gamble of trading her mother's coat for passage on a wagon train. It had been the best trade she ever made. That coat had bought her passage to a new life, but it was Marcus who had given her a home. Marcus who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. Marcus who had wrapped her in more than just his coat that cold day in Colfax. He had wrapped her in his love and protection and partnership. They had built something beautiful together, something lasting. 3 children who were growing strong and healthy, a ranch that was prospering, a love that had only deepened with time and trials. Daisy had gone from having nothing to having everything that mattered. "I love you," she said softly into the gathering dark. "I love you too," Marcus replied. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after. Years continued to pass, each one adding to the tapestry of their life together. Daniel grew into a tall, serious boy with his father's steady temperament and his mother's sharp mind. Dorothy was spirited and fearless, always climbing trees and riding horses too fast. David was the peacemaker, gentle and thoughtful, with a gift for working with animals. Marcus taught his sons and daughter everything he knew about ranching, and Daisy made sure all three children learned to read and write and do figures. She remembered her own mother's insistence on education, and she was determined to give her children every advantage. The Xavier Ranch became known throughout the territory as a fair place to work and a reliable source of good cattle. Marcus and Matthew's partnership flourished, and eventually they brought on additional hands to help with the expanded operation. Daisy ran the business side, keeping immaculate books and negotiating deals with buyers who quickly learned not to underestimate the sharp-minded woman behind the ranch's success. Emma became more than a sister-in-law. She was Daisy's closest friend. The two women raised their children together, shared their joys and sorrows, and supported each other through pregnancies and illnesses and all the challenges of ranch life. Emma eventually had 3 children of her own, and the cousin children grew up more like siblings, a tight-knit clan running wild across the ranch. When Daniel was 15, he asked his parents about their courtship. They were sitting around the dinner table, all 5 of them, and he had been studying his parents with that thoughtful look he got when he was working through something important. "How did you know," he asked, "that you wanted to get married? You only knew each other 2 weeks before you decided." Marcus and Daisy exchanged a smile, one of those wordless communications that long-married couples develop. "Sometimes you just know," Marcus said. "I looked at your mother and saw everything I had been looking for, strength and kindness and courage. I could not imagine my life without her in it." "But were you not scared?" Dorothy asked. "That is so fast. What if you were wrong?" "Of course I was scared," Daisy admitted. "I had been alone and struggling for so long. Trusting someone felt impossible, but your father never pushed. He offered me choices and respected my feelings. And he showed me through his actions, not just words, that he was trustworthy." "That is the key," Marcus added. "Trust is not built in grand gestures. It is built in the small moments, the daily choices to be kind and honest and supportive." "Is that why you gave her your coat?" David asked. He had heard the story many times and never tired of it. "I gave her my coat because she needed it and I had it to give," Marcus said simply. "I did not do it expecting anything in return. I did it because it was the right thing to do." "But it worked," Dorothy said with satisfaction. "Mother fell in love with you because you were kind." "I fell in love with him because he saw me as a person, not just as someone to use or ignore," Daisy corrected gently. "He treated me with respect and dignity when I had very little of either. That meant everything." The children absorbed this, and Daisy hoped they were learning the right lessons. She wanted them to understand that love was built on mutual respect and kindness, not just passion or convenience. When Daniel was 18, he told his parents he wanted to go east to study business and agriculture. It was a hard conversation because it meant he would be gone for years, but Marcus and Daisy supported his decision. They had built something successful, but they wanted their children to have even more opportunities. The day Daniel left for college was bittersweet. Daisy held her son tightly, remembering the squalling infant he had been, and marveled at the confident young man he had become. "Make us proud," Marcus said, shaking his son's hand. "I will," Daniel promised, "and I will come back. This ranch, this land, it is my home. I just want to learn how to make it even better." Dorothy, at 16, declared she had no interest in leaving. She wanted to work the ranch to learn every aspect of the operation. Marcus beamed with pride at his daughter's determination and began teaching her everything he knew. Daisy watched her daughter ride out with Marcus each morning and felt a fierce pride of her own. Dorothy was fearless and capable, everything Daisy had learned to be and more. David, at 13, was still figuring out his path. He loved the animals but was also drawn to books and learning. Daisy suspected he might want to become a veterinarian, but she did not push. He would find his way in his own time. As the years rolled on, Marcus and Daisy grew older together. There were silver threads in Daisy's dark hair now, and Marcus's face was deeply lined from years in the sun and wind. But they were healthy and active, still working the ranch every day, still finding joy in the life they had built. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Daniel had returned from college with a degree and a new wife, a smart young woman from Philadelphia named Sarah. Dorothy had married one of the ranch hands, a good man named Thomas, who treated her as an equal partner. David was studying to be a veterinarian in San Francisco, coming home for the celebration. There were grandchildren now, too. Daniel and Sarah had a 2-year-old son, and Dorothy was expecting her first child. The house was full of noise and laughter and life, everything Daisy had ever wanted. Matthew stood up to make a toast, his own hair now more silver than dark. 20 years ago, my brother arrived at this ranch with a woman he had known for all of 2 weeks, and he told me he was going to marry her. I thought he had lost his mind. Everyone laughed, but Marcus was right. Daisy made this family complete. She brought her strength and wisdom and love, and she made all of us better. So here is to Marcus and Daisy, to 20 years of marriage and to many more. To Marcus and Daisy. Everyone chorused, raising their glasses. Later, after the party had wound down and the guests had dispersed to their various bedrooms, Marcus and Daisy sat on the porch in the cool evening air. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the sounds of the ranch settling for the night drifted on the breeze. 20 years, Daisy said wonderingly. It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Best 20 years of my life, Marcus said, pulling her close. Mine too. Daisy rested her head on his shoulder, perfectly content. Do you ever think about how different things might have been? If I had not traded my coat, if we had not met. Sometimes, Marcus admitted. And then I decide I do not want to think about it because a world without you in it is not a world I want to imagine. They sat in comfortable silence, as they had done countless times over the years. Daisy thought about that desperate girl who had traded away her mother's coat, who had been so focused on survival that she could not see beyond the next day. She could never have imagined this life, this love, this overwhelming sense of belonging. You know what I am most grateful for? Daisy asked after a while. What? That you did not just give me your coat that day. You gave me your heart, your partnership, your unwavering support. You gave me a family and a home and a purpose. You gave me everything. You gave me the same, love, Marcus said, pressing a kiss to her hair. We saved each other. Yes, Daisy agreed softly. I suppose we did. More years passed, bringing changes and challenges. Daniel took over more of the ranch operations, bringing modern techniques he had learned in school. Dorothy and Thomas started their own small ranch on land Marcus, and Daisy gave them as a wedding present. David opened a veterinary practice in Virginia City, but visited often. Marcus developed a lingering cough one winter that worried everyone, but with rest and Daisy's careful nursing, he recovered. Daisy fell from a horse at 52 and broke her arm, scaring Marcus half to death until the doctor assured him she would be fine. They faced each challenge together, just as they always had. Their love had weathered time and trials and come out stronger for it. They knew each other's thoughts, could communicate with a look, moved together like two parts of a whole. On their 30th anniversary, Marcus surprised Daisy with a gift. They were alone in the house for once, all the children and grandchildren occupied elsewhere, and he presented her with a small wrapped package. Inside was her mother's coat, the one she had traded away so long ago in Colfax. Daisy gasped, running her hands over the familiar wool. "How?" she whispered. "I found Fletcher a few years back," Marcus explained. "He still had it, amazingly enough. I bought it from him. I have been waiting for the right time to give it back to you." Tears streamed down Daisy's face as she held the coat. It smelled like cedar from storage, but she could still catch the faintest hint of her mother's lavender soap. She had thought this piece of her past was lost forever. "Marcus, this is too much," she said, overcome. "Nothing is too much for you," Marcus said simply. "You traded this coat for a chance at a better life, and I wanted you to have it back now that you have that life. Consider it a thank you for taking a chance on a drifting cowboy with nothing to offer but his coat and his heart." Daisy laughed through her tears and kissed her husband deeply. "You offered me everything," she said, "and you have spent 30 years proving it every single day." That coat went back into the cedar chest, but now it symbolized something different. Not just loss and sacrifice, but the journey that had brought Daisy to her.